Hillary Clinton's campaign and book tour for her memoir, Hard Choices, is about as carefully controlled as it could be. But there are still plenty of questions that the former First Lady, Senator, and Secretary of State would probably rather not face. Brianna Keeler is back with me tonight. Brianna, those questions are?
Well, I think there are a number of them. Some of them obviously have to do with Benghazi. She probably doesn't really feel great about revisiting the 90s and Monica Lewinsky, but she's prepared to do that. And certainly as the Democratic frontrunner, she is very much in the Republican crosshairs. She's the frontrunner by a mile. And so this book tour really gives her a chance to flex some of those political muscles that may have atrophied and also to try out a potential message for a presidential run.
After decades in the political spotlight, Hillary Clinton comes with an entourage of issues and controversies, and her critics have every intention of keeping them in the spotlight. She is a regular piñata for conservatives on the talk show circuit and The Drudge Report. Karl Rove infamously raising issues of her health and that fall she took as Secretary of State in 2012.
I didn't say she had brain damage. She had a serious episode, a serious health episode.
Add to that her age. If elected in 2016, Hillary Clinton would be the second oldest president in history, younger only than Ronald Reagan, a fact Rove is surely mindful of.
I wish him well.
And then there's Monica Lewinsky, just last month writing in Vanity Fair that she found Clinton's, quote, impulse to blame the woman, not only me but herself, troubling. Hillary Clinton recently told People magazine, I certainly have moved on. I think everybody needs to look to the future. And that People cover photo itself, her 16th, conservatives were quickly questioning whether she's using a walker. She isn't. It's just a patio chair. She's also giving critics some fresh ammunition today, finding herself in the awkward position of defending her wealth, telling ABC News she and her husband were not only dead broke, but in debt when they left the White House.
Struggled to, piece together the resources for mortgages, for houses, for Chelsea's education.
Houses, plural, not something most Americans connect with. Also not reality for most Americans, she recently revealed she hasn't driven a car in 20 years.
Last time I actually drove a car myself was 1996.
Politically, at least, Hillary Clinton is very much in the driver's seat. She has so much of the media attention. She's very much the darling of the polls. And Republicans admit that she is a formidable opponent for sure. And they do harken back a lot, talking about the 90s. We've heard Monica Lewinsky come up. So it was interesting today to hear Hillary Clinton asked about this in this interview with ABC News.
But she is running all alone right now, Brianna Keeler. So let's see what happens if there is some competition to come. Brianna Keeler, thank you very much. Joining me now is a man who definitely knows his way around the White House scandals, and that is Bernstein. Also, Politico's Maggie Haberman is with us, and New York Times columnist Ross Douthat, and Lanny Davis. Lanny knows a lot about everything as well. He's the author of Crisis Tales, 5 Rules for Coping with Crisis in Business, Politics, and Life, and he's a former White House special counsel for the Clinton administration. As I said, I feel like it's the 1990s all over again, but I'll take it because I was a lot younger and a lot thinner as well. Well, guys, how did she do? Starting with you, Lanny, how'd she do?
Well, I surprised anyone on the panel to say that I think she did great.
As easy as that. Maggie?
She did very well. She had one gaffe, one very clear gaffe, and she has some questions that she's going to continue to get asked that she did not answer, I think, sufficiently for a lot of people, especially on Benghazi. That's not going away. But I think, given how long this interview was, it was well over an hour, she did very well.
What was the gaffe?
The houses thing was not an answer I think she should give again, and I think she would do it over if she had to.
And the questions on Benghazi that you think she's going to face over and over again?
I think she's going to continue to get asked about security. She's going to continue to get asked about whether she did enough. She has taken responsibility, but she's also said she didn't make security decisions. Her answer is legitimate. These questions are legitimate. It's just not going to go away. Whether it's going to be decisive is a very different question, but she will get asked.
Ross, how did she do?
Well, I think I completely agree with Maggie. I think the only real news-making gaffe is the houses line, and that's been the thing that people have been talking about today more generally, just the issue of the Clintons' really, really extraordinary wealth. And you were talking before about, the 90s and Lewinsky, and we're talking about Benghazi. In terms of stuff that really could hurt her in 2016, and to be clear, I think she's obviously a very formidable candidate, but I think the sort of vague sleaziness of especially her husband's wealth garnering is an actual problem, and she hasn't figured out how to address it.
For goodness
Carl?
sake.
Well, I come to this as a biographer of Hillary Clinton. I spent 8 years writing a biography about her that came out in 2008, and I think we saw glimpses of genuineness and who she really is when she talked about family, about faith, about religion. But there also was a lot of defensiveness, and that's always been a problem for her. It's a question of tone, but the most important thing to remember, I believe, is that we are in the midst of a huge Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton produced production, the likes of which we've never seen anything like this in our history. And we're watching what they want us to watch, and they're perfecting this stagecraft as we go through the next year or two, assuming that she's going to run. And we got a pretty good preview tonight, and she handled a lot of it very well. But there is this kind of aggressive defensiveness on some questions, and yet we see, as I learned doing this biography, there are genuine aspects of her that came through, and that's what we want to see more of. What we don't see is real introspection, and that's always been the point that we want to see and almost never do.
Right on, Carl. Right now we're seeing what they want to produce, what the interviews that they're doing. They're running the show until there is some serious competition out there, and she's asked some very serious questions on the real campaign trail. She's already started that. But, you know, Carl mentioned, you know, that there is some defensiveness, especially about Monica Lewinsky. I would wonder if that's part of her defensiveness. Let's listen to what she said, Maggie, and the first question will be to you.
Monica Lewinsky is back in the news.
Well, she's perfectly free to do that. She is, in my view, an American who gets to express herself however she chooses. But that's, you know, not something that I spent a lot of time thinking about.
Did you call her a narcissistic Looney Tune?
I am not going to comment on what I did or did not say back in the late 90s.
Okay, so Maggie, don't hold it against me, but I actually want Lanny to answer this, since he was there with her for this. So Lanny, for a crisis management perspective, as a personal friend, how does she handle the more salacious stories, whether it's the People magazine, Walker controversy, or Monica Lewinsky resurfacing?
I think she's said a respectful opening sentence that Ms. Lewinsky's entitled to her say, and she also did exactly the correct thing to say, I'm moving on. And most Americans are going to get that. And I'd also like to comment about the sleazy wealth. I have to get my equal time here. Can you imagine a Republican running against Hillary Clinton on the idea that she favors wealthy people as opposed to raising the minimum wage? This is going to be a campaign about the future of the country, especially about the economic disparities of the country. And John Kennedy's wealth was not exactly
Lanny,
a
I understand what you're saying,
handicap.
but that doesn't mean that it's not going to turn Democrats off as well. I mean, you're looking at it, what he said.
I doubt it, Don, because her views on the issues, what she wants to do for the middle class, are a lot more important than her ability to now earn and be able to afford 2 houses. I'm just wondering how a Republican is going to criticize the Clintons for having too much wealth. That will be an interesting argument for Republicans.
Well, Ross, who is harder on Hillary Clinton, you think? Is it conservative media or mainstream media, to follow up on what Lanny is saying?
Well, I think there's just a difference between the way the two medias cover her. And I think that both of them, though, right now are probably looking at issues that voters aren't going to be focused on. I mean, I agree that I think she handled the Monica Lewinsky question perfectly well. I think that terrain is good for her. Her popularity increased during the Lewinsky scandal. It made her a sympathetic figure. I think, again, the problems for her are things that are only just starting to get coverage now, which relate not to the fact of her wealth itself, but to make a distinction that I think Mr. Davis isn't quite grasping, the way in which that wealth was accumulated. And I think it does make a difference that it's been accumulated through essentially her husband, the former president of the United States, making tens and hundreds of millions of dollars basically on the promise of future access to another American administration. There's nothing illegal about it, but it is, like a lot of stuff that attaches to the Clintons, a little sleazy.
So, Maggie, what does she need to do? Does she need to change her relationship to the press at all? Because some are saying the press is giving her a free ride, and she seems to think, and her camp seems to think, that she has a contentious relationship with the press. What needs to change here? How do you put the two together.
She does not like the press. I've written about this with a colleague. This is not news. This is pretty well-covered terrain. She is not a fan. She is going to have some kind of a media-friendly strategy going forward. Her folks have all said over the course of the last year, you will see a different type of campaign, less aggressive. We'll see. What she needs to do beyond just coming up with a good strategy for the press, though, she needs a why for her candidacy. That is not something that we have heard the beginnings of in these interviews or in her book yet. We will have to wait and see what that looks like until early next year. I do agree that the houses thing is not going to be an issue for her because of policies. I absolutely agree with Lanny on that. But I do think she's going to have to come up with the rationale for why she should be president. She did not have that last time.
Okay, all right, hang on. Well, you'll get it in, but hang on. Stay with me, everyone, because coming up there's one Clinton who's definitely not running in 2016. Well, maybe. But could Bill Clinton end up back in the White House anyway? We're going to talk about that next. Well, you've heard that old saying, history repeats itself, but the question is America ready for another Clinton versus Bush battle for the White House? I'm back now with Carl Bernstein, Maggie Haberman, Ross Douthat, and also Lanny Davis. Carl, I think you were wanting to get in. I'm going to ask you this question. I want to play this soundbite. She's talking about women, double standards in politics, and then you can say your piece.
When you're in the spotlight as a woman, you know you're being judged constantly. I mean, it is just never ending. And you get a little, worried about, okay, well, people over on this side are loving what I'm wearing, looking like, saying. People over on this side aren't. And how, your natural tendency is how do you bring people together so that you can better communicate? I'm done with that. I mean, I'm just done.
She's done with it. So, two big questions. Would she ultimately be running against herself or running against the man? What do you think? What do you think there, Carl?
Look, I think she's going to be running for herself and for her values. The question is, can she inspire people in this country? After 40 years in public life almost, we still really don't know in many ways who she is internally. You can read my biography and you get an idea of it, what's important to her. The question is, can she convey that beyond a kind of rote? She's great on the issues. Most Americans agree with her on the issues. Almost every poll shows. The question is, can she inspire and lead?
You think after all these years that Americans still don't know who the real Hillary Clinton is? Is that what you're saying? They don't
I believe that utterly. It's why I wrote A Woman in Charge, a biography of her.
Do you guys believe that?
Don,
do you believe that, Lanny?
Well, first of all, I think Carl has a standard of introspection and getting to know people from within, and that's perfectly valid. But Hillary Clinton is a very popular political leader. In 1958, Maggie, we didn't know what John Kennedy's program was for the future. We've got plenty of time. You're absolutely right. This campaign will be about the future and the economic issues. Again, I'm going to look forward to Republicans attacking Hillary Clinton for being in favor of the
Let me jump in here and say it's not 1958. People want to know personal things about their
Absolutely.
candidates.
I'm just saying
it's the issue back
Don,
in 2008.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
Okay.
I'm saying it's a little early, 2 years away, at least 1 year away before a campaign begins to start to raise those expectations. But I think that the Hillary Clinton you saw tonight and that I've known for over 40 years, you saw the laughter, I think the authenticity. There's a great sense of humor that you saw about the Karl Rove comment. I wish Karl Rove well. He was known as George Bush's brain. She laughed and gave the kind of personality that I've known through the years. And I certainly agree that Hillary Clinton did emerge too late in the 2008 campaign.
Okay.
I think she's now going to show us a lot more of herself.
She even admitted it as much herself, because she's saying back in 2008, I really didn't have a very good strategy. She admitted that in that interview tonight. I want you to listen to this, because I'm wondering if people are tired of Clinton versus Bush all over again. Listen.
Barbara Bush has said, enough with the Clintons and the Bushes, the Clintons and the Bushes. Yeah. It's just getting silly, she said. Do you feel some of that?
I don't, because this is a democracy. People get to choose their leaders.
Is the White House yours to lose?
Well, I don't think so, because if I were to decide to pursue it, I would be working as hard as any underdog or any newcomer, because I don't want to take anything for granted if I decide to do it.
So it's going to be Clinton versus Bush again. The question is, are we going to get Bill Clinton all over again? Because Bill Clinton says, what, you get two for the price of, you get one for free. Remember he said that, Maggie?
It was you get a co-presidency, essentially, not his exact words. I don't think that we are going to see Bill Clinton play the same type of role in this campaign that he certainly did in the last campaign. I think he has been very careful while she was at the State Department to be pretty disciplined. He watched what he said. The foundation was much more careful about certain engagements that it had. It certainly has been since she left. He has been very on message and very deferential. That doesn't mean that he has given up his interest, and it certainly doesn't mean she's not seeking his advice, but I don't think you're going to see her offering up the Clintons as a co-presidency. She is, however, talking a lot about his economic record, and that's not insignificant.
So the question is, Ross, and I think that maybe this has yet to be found out, right? And we need to do more polling, and it needs to get closer to 2016, obviously. But I think there might be some Clinton-Bush fatigue among the American public.
I'm sure there is, but at the same time, if you look at the Democratic field, I mean, there are reasons why we're talking so much about Hillary Clinton, and they aren't just her unique status. They're also the fact that nobody comes anywhere close to her in the polls, and it's actually hard to imagine anyone coming close to her in the polls. And the reality is that, yes, she was the favorite in 2008, and she was upset then, but she was upset by Barack Obama, who is a once-in-a-generation political figure. And if you look at the Martin O'Malley's and even the Elizabeth Warrens that people keep talking about, there just isn't an Obama in the group. So Clinton fatigue or no Clinton fatigue, it's very hard to imagine how, if she runs, and I think we can assume she's running, she won't be the nominee.
Yeah, you said there isn't a Barack Obama in the group. Well, Barack Obama hadn't even emerged at this point.
No, but he had. This is the thing. If you go back to 2004, he emerged at the Democratic National Convention. His books were selling. People were writing columns urging him to run. I was writing columns as a kid urging him to run. And I mean, there's a little bit of that with Elizabeth Warren, but nobody looks at Elizabeth Warren and sees someone who can slay the giant or the dragon, or if you prefer some more flattering metaphor.
Let's be real. This nomination is hers if she runs. I mean,
but Carl, here's the danger. It's hers if she's run. She's the only man or woman out there. She's the only person out there now. So is she in danger of too much exposure? Is this too much of a rollout right now?
She's running against herself.
Right.
And how she handles these next 2 years, it's very much about tone. It's very much about whether she can win over enough independent voters to be comfortable with her as a person, as a leader. I don't think it's just about issues. As I say, she's got the country on the issues. The demographics show it. But she has got to get people comfortable with her. They're comfortable and have been for a long time, I think, with her husband. But not so much with her. And that's what this theater is all about. And she has got a production going on with a cast of thousands, everybody taking notes and giving them to her at the end of each day's performance. We've never seen anything like this. And we have to look at her and this campaign and our political process right now as a Clinton phenomenon to some extent.
Could I just...
No, you can't, Lanny. I'm sorry. And you
I was going to agree with Carl for the first time.
All right, so you got it in. You can blame my producers for that or for the sake of time. And we will have all of you back. Thank you all. Hillary Clinton takes audience questions in a town hall meeting, in a town hall at Washington's Museum. That's on June 17th. Christiane Amanpour moderates, and you can see the whole thing live right here on CNN. That's beginning at 5 p.m. Eastern, and then again at 9 p.m. Make sure you watch it here. Again, thanks to all of my guests, great guests, and we will have them back. When we come right back here